Hello, and welcome to Sonoma Strong Healing Fair's online event. I am Diana Borges, one of the co-founders of Sonoma Strong Healing Fairs, along with Sherry Petrioli. And first, I'd like you to know that we are recording this. So if you have any questions or comments while we are recording, you can put it into the chat. And if you don't know where that is, if you're on the computer, you just take your cursor down to the bottom, click the little chat icon, and then over to the right, you can type in your comments. And after the recording is over, we will open this up for discussion. So if you want to stay later, you're welcome to do that. The recording will be available on our YouTube channel, Sonoma Strong Healing Fairs, which is accessible through our website, sonomastronghealingfair.com. So this is our first online event, but we have held 3 in-person healing fairs, the first being in 2017 when the wildfires came through Sonoma County and the surrounding areas. I would like to share with you our contact information. On the screen, you can see our mission statement, and like I said, the website is sonomastronghealingfair.com. If you want to contact Sherry or myself, you can email us at info@sonomastronghealingfair.com. Our Facebook page is Sonoma Strong Healing Fair. So tonight we are honored to host Dr. Michelle Dexter, and Michelle is an integrative psychologist who specializes in love, sex, and relationships. She's going to be speaking to us about releasing the body's secrets, cranial acupressure. And she's going to show us a self-help acupressure technique and explain how cranial acupressure works. So I turn this over to Michelle, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here, and I'm so excited that all of you are here too. So give me just a moment here. I'm going to share my screen so that we can look at my slideshow here. Okay, is that working? Can everyone see it? Okay, great. All right, there we go. Alrighty, so like we said, today we are talking about releasing the body's secrets and cranial acupressure. So I'm excited to share this with you for a number of reasons, but most importantly, because I'm really excited about sharing the veracity of this particular technique. I have been involved in psychology for well over 20 years now, probably coming up more like 30. And I was really interested at some point along the line in my work with psychology about how actually to do psychology well. I wanted something that worked well. I'd been in talk therapy for a number of years, and I'd been making progress, but I kind of felt like I was making snail's progress, and I really wanted something that was going to be more like rabbit progress. And so when I was introduced to traditional Chinese medicine and energy psychology, I found it, and and that's when things were like really clicking. So that's why I'm so excited to share this with you. So a very brief introduction about me. As you know, I'm an integrative psychologist and sexologist. So integrative psychology is the branch of psychology that's very holistic. It's very much interested in treating the body, the mind, and the spirit. And sexology is very much interested, or at least I am, in healthy sexual functioning and healthy love and sex. So I've been in practice for 17 years now, and I love to solve problems of depression, anxiety, lovelessness, difficult relationships, and more. One of my favorite things to do is to help people get happily partnered or happily married, and also to help them cope when love isn't going well, and to have them have happy, healthy, loving relationships, whether those are platonic or romantic. So given my background in integrative psychology, again, treating the whole human being, like I said, I wanted to talk about some things that I think are particularly relevant today. So as a very brief overview, what we are going to cover today is number 1, why we get, quote, stressed out. What does that mean? What is stress about? 2, how emotions can quite literally get trapped in your body. This is actually a cellular process. So we're going to talk about that. Number 3, we're going to talk about how old memories can impact your current health picture. Turns out that it's actually more than you realize. And lastly, why we can't think of our way out of a bad mood or depression or anxiety. You guys may have heard people say things like, "Oh, just get over it," or "Oh, just choose to be happy," or just smile, you'll feel better. But you know what? It actually doesn't work that way. And we're going to talk about why, and we're going to talk about actually what to do that actually does help with bad moods, depression, and anxiety. Alrighty, so the first thing I want to talk about is stress. So, just by a quick raise of hand, how many of you, think of stress as, something that's purely in the body? Anybody? Yeah, something that's maybe purely in the mind. No, all right. I don't see any hands. All right, so you're right. It's actually a mind, body, spirit problem. It's actually very much a thing that that is what am I trying to say here? That affects all of you. And the way that people often think of stress is just like a feeling of like maybe just like in the pit of their stomach, or that they can't breathe well or something like that. But psychologists actually define it a little bit differently. Psychologists define it as not having enough resources to be able to sufficiently cope with a situation. That's the definition of stress. So it might mean that you feel as if I don't have enough time to be able to cope with this situation. I've got this looming deadline at work, and I don't have enough time to finish it. And now I'm being threatened because my boss will be upset, and maybe I'll lose that account, and then maybe my job will be threatened, and now my livelihood is threatened. So that's an example of what stress means. Or here's an emotional stress. My colleague told me a story about a client of hers whose husband invited her out for dinner, and she thought that they were just going to have a nice romantic dinner, and they sat down and were chatting, and then he dropped a bomb on her, and he said, "Well, I just want you to know that I've been having an affair with the lady that I carpool to work with, and I'm leaving you for her. We're getting divorced." So obviously that's horrible. And she really felt in that moment that she just didn't have enough emotional resources to be able to cope with that situation. So that's really what stress is about. So in other words, we get overwhelmed. We feel as if I can't cope with this. But why? Why is it that we have that feeling of I can't cope with this? I'm stressed out. Well, it turns out that it's because of our history of distress, and dare I even use the word trauma. Now, here's the thing about trauma, is that trauma is a continuum. It ranges from little tiny t to all the way to very big T. So little tiny t is, things like you're late for work, or you're late for a meeting. Those things are definitely, stressful and traumatic. And then, of course, on the other end, the big T, those are things like loss of a loved one, bankruptcy, divorce, loss of a house, things of that nature. So all of us, every single, day of our lives, we're dealing with little tiny traumas, hopefully more, just, little ones than the big ones. But it happens to us all the time, and it doesn't matter whether it's a physical injury trauma or whether it's an emotional trauma, the body responds to it the same. It's still a traumatic response in the body. The body responds to it as if it is being threatened. Now, why? Why is it that the body says, oh, okay, you know what, this emotional threat is actually a threat to my physical survival? Because most of the time it is. So think about, what humans are. And what I mean by that is that we are social animals. That's the crux of who we are. We are social animals. We need each other. We do not do well when we are in situations where we are forced into isolation. In fact, people who have been forced into isolation, because they were being punished, in a criminal type situation, they generally manifest with post-traumatic stress disorder. So in other words, it can make you a little nuts. And I say that, not without, the seriousness and the gravity behind it. So that woman, whose husband, dropped a bomb on her and said that he was divorcing her over a romantic dinner, that is still a threat to her survival. It was threatening her emotional well-being. It threatened her tribe. It threatened her lifestyle. It threatened her financial safety. And so to have to face a divorce and face losing friends and losing your partner, the person that you rely on, for support in life, and to face financial distress, and to face all the emotional threat and the process of dealing with all the negative emotions that go along with a divorce, yes, that quite literally does threaten our well-being in the world, which is again why our bodies recognize little t to big T, all of that trauma as a threat to survival. So you may be thinking like, surely, I've had traumas in my life. Absolutely. Who hasn't? That's every single one of us. We've gotten in fights with people. We've lost friendships. Maybe we've become estranged from family members. Most of us adults, something like over 60% of the population now has been divorced at least once. So you may be thinking, but I thought I was over that. Well, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that you can get over that, but the bad news is that you've got put a little bit of effort into figuring out how to get over that, and that's what the cranial acupressure tonight is about. That's about how to get over it, really. So I want to talk a little bit about cells. So it turns out that there is such a thing as cellular memory. And a cell is very much like a microchip. So if your body is a biological computer and the cells are the microchips, they basically hold all of the information about what was programmed into them. So if you've gone through a traumatic situation like a divorce, guess what? All of that information is now programmed into your cells. So all of the hurt, all of the anger, all of the resentment, all of the fear, all of the terror, all the feelings of loss, all of the feelings of I don't have an identity, all of the feelings of what do I do now, all the feelings of shame, all the feelings of regret, you get the picture here, that they're all programmed into the cells. And cells run on original, earlier, similar, and then they run on repeat. So what this means is that if we could, again, go to a computer analogy here, let's say that we have an original event. So this is the first time that this woman, feels threatened in her marriage, right? Okay, so now we've opened up a computer file and we've labeled it divorce. And so now, anytime anything that comes up in her life that goes along with that feeling that she had when she was going through divorce, now the computer file opens up all the cells and says, oh, yeah, let's run that program again. Oh, yep, there's that original program. Yep, yep, just like that. Yep, let's do it again and again and again and again. And this is not to say that divorce is not complicated, but this can help to explain, why people might get into relationships, that don't work out again and again and again and again, because they're running these original programs. Again, cells work on repeat. So also, once we have that file folder, if there is something earlier that made us predisposed to it, that can also evoke the cells to run on repeat. So let's say that your parents got divorced when you were a child. And so now, every time there's a threat in your marriage or your relationship, oh, there it is. There's that feeling of feeling scared or overwhelmed or terrorized or resentful that I had when my parents were fighting and getting a divorce or after they got divorced. Oh, there's the same emotion. It's going to run on repeat. And also the same thing with similar. So it might be that your friend is going through a divorce. And so now you have all the same feelings. So now, oh, okay, there it goes again. Oh, there's my resentment. There's my anger. There's my grief, all of it. So you may be thinking, well, why isn't my willpower enough? Why can't I just will myself not to have these feelings? And in fact, I'm reminded of two young men who came to me. They were brothers. And one had, quote, stolen the other's girlfriend. Now, obviously, this is not an ideal situation. So it was the older brother who had stolen the younger brother's girlfriend. And the younger brother, was in some distress and said to me, Michelle, I just want to stop hating him. And I just can't stop. And I said to him, well, yes, there's a reason why. You can't willpower yourself out of feelings of hate or bitterness or, what other negative feeling you've got going on. You actually have to have a way of getting through this. So there are two systems in the brain. The first is the rational system, which is your prefrontal cortex. This is the part that's right up here. Now, for those of you who are very young, I have news for you. Your prefrontal cortex is not done cooking. It takes about until age 25 for your brain to be done and for your prefrontal cortex to be done. So this is why, by the way, teenagers are terribly impulsive, because their prefrontal cortexes are not done cooking in the oven, if you will. Yeah. So this is the part of you that's all about rational thought. It's sometimes called the CEO, because it's the one that makes decisions. It's the one that looks at the whole situation and makes plans. It's the one who is able to say, okay, let me look at all the emotions, let me look at all the data, let me look at all the facts. Okay, I've surveyed the whole situation. All right, now from this place of maturity, now I'm going to make a decision. Now, the other system is your emotional system, and that's your limbic system. And as you can see on this slide, that's the part that's in color. So as you can see, it's actually the core of your forebrain. And in your emotional system, in your limbic system, this is the part of you that is, always, looking for, how do I feel about the situation? And inside of it, there's a part called your amygdala. It's right there on your screen. I'm going to try to use my pointer here. It's right here. It's these little orange bulbs. So these little parts right here. Now, your amygdala, if we could give it a picture, your amygdala is your threat detector. It's always surveying the situation for threats. And remember, it doesn't matter if it's physical threat or emotional threat. It's still surveying the situation. And so it's the one that, if you could think about it like the guard, the guard who wears the uniform, and he's got his jackboots on and his gloves and his gun with his bayonet, and he's marching around the perimeter, making sure that everything is safe. So anytime the amygdala sees that there's a threat, it sounds the alarm, red alert, red alert. And so it lets the body know, we've got a threat here. And so what that feels like, because it feels like, quote, stress in your body. So you may have noticed that feeling of like your gut clenching. You may have noticed that the hair on your arms stands up. Yeah. You may have noticed that that the color drains from your face. Yeah. Because what that is doing is it is preparing you for fight, flight, or freeze. It is trying to save your life. So all the blood goes to your core because it's going to try to save, all of your internal organs. And it means that your liver dumps its supply of glycogen. So this is why it's really hard to manage your blood sugar if you're diabetic, because you're dumping your glycogen all the time. Because it's preparing the muscles. Like, okay, I've got to run, I've got to fight, or I've got to freeze and play dead. So when we are traumatized or distressed, or we have a threat in the situation, guess what? The amygdala is sounding the red alert. And so, when you're living in this situation again and again and again and again, because again, remember, it's earlier, original, or similar. So that can be a trigger to you. So you may have no physical threat to you in this physical environment, but because your mind was like, oh, I saw something original, I saw something similar, I saw something that reminded me of that, red alert, red alert, red alert. So this is why it can be really, really, really hard to control your emotional response. You can't willpower yourself through this because your amygdala is running the show. And in fact, that's what we call an amygdala hijack. Yeah. Your amygdala can quite literally hijack your prefrontal cortex. So how does that work? Well, your amygdala works a heck of a lot faster than your prefrontal cortex. Your amygdala can have a response in literally a fraction of a second. And your prefrontal cortex usually takes about 2 to 3 seconds to kick in. So how many of you, and I'm going to be the first one to raise my hand, have blurted out something really ugly and then 2 seconds later thought, oh, I should not have said that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, me too. That I've yelled something, or I've expressed my frustration in maybe unkind words, and then thought, I really wish I hadn't said that. So guess what? When that happens, that is an amygdala hijack. So what's the solution here? Well, what that means is that we have got to work with the amygdala's rules. So what does that mean? Well, it means that when we are having that feeling of threat or that feeling of stress or that feeling of trauma, that we have to acknowledge it. And rather than trying to stuff it down and saying, that's bad, get back in your cage, or you in the jackboots and your uniform, go sit in the corner, that it means we need to acknowledge it and we need to say something to it like, thank you for letting me know. Thank you for trying to keep me safe. I appreciate that. And if you happen to get hijacked by your amygdala and stuff comes flying out of your mouth, that, there's always the apology, right? Sorry, I wish I hadn't said that. Okay, so moving on, what the body knows, but maybe isn't telling you in words. So our bodies talk to us in pain and in symbolic messages. So the bodies often talk to us through symbolic messages, through pain, by something that if you think about it, it's like, oh, that makes sense. So for example, the bladder is usually talking to you about being pissed off. So if you have a bladder infection, it's because you're pissed off. Yeah. Breasts are usually about nurturing. So if there's something going on with breasts, it's usually about not feeling nurtured or taken care of in the world. Feet and ankles are usually about moving forward. So like, foot and ankle issues, about like I'm stuck, I can't move forward. Knees are usually about flexibility. So if there's knee pain, it's about feeling inflexible. Yeah. So instead of having the attitude of like, my body gives me pain, how awful. Maybe we can have the attitude of, thank you, my body. Thank you for this pain. What are you trying to show me? Oh, I'm going to pay attention now. Thank you for this message. Thank you. I will notice what is not working and I will do my best to fix it. So it makes sense that when we feel that stress and therefore overwhelm, that this leads to quite literally trapped emotion in the body. Well, how does that work? Well, where is it? So it turns out that our cells obviously make up our tissues, which make up our organs, which make up our systems. So how is this expressed? Well, there's something called neuropeptides. And these are often called the molecules of emotion, because that's exactly what they are. These neuropeptides are literal chemical structures that flow through the bloodstream, and they help neurons and cells communicate with each other. And so it turns out that they are actually influenced by our feeling states. So when we have nice, happy feelings, our neuropeptides are actually wonderful for the body. They help reduce inflammation and they do cellular repair. Yay! But when we are having negative emotions, so anxiety, fear, any of those negative emotions that go along with trauma, unfortunately, the neuropeptides actually do cellular damage. And that leads to inflammation, and that leads to system dysfunction. So in short, you can literally hurt yourself with your negative emotions. Yeah. So when people talk about having a toxic diet, one of the things that they need to think about, in having a clean diet is also clean thoughts. It's important. So what the body knows. So there's typically associated information or emotion with our organs. So kidneys are generally associated with fear, for example, lungs with grief, the bladder with being pissed off or miffed, the heart with being frightfully overjoyed. Now that's one that's kind of a funny word, and I'll give you a brief story about that one. So there was a young man, he was 16 years old, and he was Jewish, and so he was sent to an Israeli kibbutz. And while he was there, his counselor was a young woman whom he did not like. And so one day he was playing basketball with the other kids in the kibbutz, and he accidentally on purpose threw the basketball at the head of his camp counselor. And as it was about to hit her on the head, he thought, oh, I'm going to hit her on the head. Oh, I'm going to hit her on the head. Oh, I'm going to hit her on the head. So it's kind of that mix of emotion, of like, oh, I'm happy about it, but I'm upset that I'm happy about it. Okay. The liver is typically associated with anger, the gallbladder with resentment. You know, think about that, like the gall of it, like, how dare you? Yeah, I'm sure that woman whose husband divorced her over dinner had some gall and anger. The pancreas is generally associated with low self-esteem, and the stomach with being overly sympathetic. Oh, I just can't even stomach it, right? So when we have these trapped emotions, guess what happens? Then these dysfunctions start showing up in these areas of our bodies. So we need to look at these things. Like if I'm feeling anger, all right, what's going on there? How do I need to be nice to my liver? Or backwards, you know, if you're having liver dysfunction, all right, what am I angry about? Who am I angry with? And what do I need to do about it? Okay, so I want to move on now and give you just a brief notes on traditional Chinese medicine, also known as TCM. And the principles of traditional Chinese medicine originated approximately 20,000 years ago. And practices emerged approximately 8,000 years ago, depending on who you asked. And I figure that, you know, by now, surely somebody would have noticed if this stuff didn't work. So it's based on the idea of qi or prana or energy. And the idea that if you have a meridian, which as you can see over here, these are these meridian lines or these energy lines in your body, that if they get blocked with yucky emotion, that leads to dysfunction in some way, shape, or form. So how do we treat them? Well, we treat the meridians via acupoint stimulation. So on these meridian lines and this blow up of the face, you can see that there's all of these acupoints. And so those are the points where we treat the meridian to let out the excess qi or the excess energy or the trapped emotion. And by the way, in the West, we talk about these things just using different words. It's the same concept, you know. So in traditional Chinese medicine, where they talk about excess heat, we talk about inflammation in the West. So it's, again, this is stuff that's well known and well established in medical science, just totally different words, that's all. So now that we know the concept of traditional Chinese medicine in its very tiny itty bitty thumbnail form, we can move on to traditional Chinese medicine, cranial acupressure. So hopefully I've made a really good case here for why it's really important to treat trapped emotion, and why trapped emotion is bad for your body and bad for your psyche. And so, like I said, this is the stuff that I was really, really excited when I discovered it. And now I'm happy to share it with you, because this is the stuff that can actually make you feel better. So when we are doing traditional cranial acupressure, there's this particular technique that I like very much, and it's called unwinding the frontal and occipital lobes. And it's also known as UFO pose. Funny name, I know, but it's easy to remember. So if we go back up here for just a moment, you can see that the pose is holding your forehead and your occiput. That's the whole pose, just like this model is demonstrating. But notice what you're doing with just by holding your forehead. That red circle, you're holding all of those acupoints. So you are balancing the point for your brain, for your amygdala, your threat detector, for your emotional release points, and then a few others that are down here. There's even one right here for bladder emotions. But the point being is that you, just by doing this, are covering at least 6 really, really powerful emotional release points, you know, for your brain and your amygdala, and for other just general emotional release points. So, and then by covering the back of your head, that is your hippocampus back there, and that's where you hold memory. So what that means is that when you are holding your forehead and releasing all that emotional and brain stuff, and then you're holding the back of your head where you're holding the points for memory, it now means that you can look at your old memories through this point of prefrontal cortex, the CEO who's rational. Oh, nice. Oh, and I can actually pull the energy from my limbic system, my emotional system, into this nice rational part of my head. And now I can see the whole situation for what it is and think about it in a nice rational way. So instead of having the memory and the feeling of like, God, that sucks and that's terrible and I hate it and I feel resentful, now we can be in the space of, I feel fine now. So you just want to think about whatever the issue is while you hold your head. You want to be focused on that. It does not matter whether you place your left hand or your right hand on your forehead. Either way, some people like to alternate. Doesn't matter. And it should take up to 3 minutes. And you know that it's done because you feel calmer. You have a new perspective on the situation. And the most common thing that people tell me is that they feel lighter. They just feel like this sense of like something is lifted off of them. So I thought we would do this as we are wrapping up for just a moment. You know, just think of something that is mildly upsetting to you. I don't want anybody having a meltdown right now. Something, you know, just mildly upsetting, and maybe just focusing on that, taking a few deep breaths while you hold your head. And just letting that go. When you feel ready, feel free to join us here. So this UFO pose is basically a panacea. It works about 90% of the time for 90% of everything. So I use it just to deal with just the stress at the end of the day, you know, just minor stresses, major stresses, just hold my head. Anytime somebody has said something to me that's upsetting, anytime there's been anything that I've heard that's been kind of shocking, just anytime. You really can't overuse the pose. And I think it's also a good general relationship rule, whether platonic or romantic, that if you're having a heated discussion, hold your head first and then talk second. So having said that, here's how to find me. I welcome all of you to continue to be in touch, and I'd love to share more of my tips and tools about how to release trapped emotion and about how to feel better.
Well, I, for one, thought that was very, very good.
Yeah. Great.
That was great. Where's our host?
I'm right here.
Okay.
Lovely.
Okay.
Great talk. Thanks, Michelle.
Michelle, thank you.
You're so welcome.
Yeah, that was amazing. And yeah, we'll stick around after we stop the recording so we can open it up to some free-form Q&A off the recording. So again, thank you. My name is Sherry Pedrioli, and I am the founder of Holistic Choices Incorporated and the other co-founder of Sonoma Strong Healing Fair. Holistic Choices and Sonoma Strong Healing Fair are both nonprofit organizations that continue to educate our community with free healing fairs, compilation books, referral directories. In many ways, we want to continue to do this free for, you know, all communities, actually worldwide. And the whole idea is we want people to explore their choices in alternative and holistic healthcare. It's so important before making any life-changing decisions. So for more information about our nonprofit, you can go to sonomastronghealingfair.com or choicesbookseries.com. And right now I'm going to actually show, there was a few people that came on after. I'm going to show the screen again with our contact information, Sonoma Strong Healing Fair.com. You can reach myself and Diana at info@sonomastronghealingfair.com. and of course our Facebook page. And we have been doing this, we're on 28 days, and some days we've had 2 sessions, so it's been amazing. Today was awesome. We had 2 very, very good presenters. It was just amazing. So Michelle, again, thank you.
My pleasure.
Tomorrow we're going to do something different. We had to make a change in the schedule, so we're going to do a panel, and we're going to give you some more tips and tricks to dealing with stressful situations in these times or any time. And then we're going to open it up to a full Q&A. So no real presenter, just a few people, practitioners giving some awesome quick tips. And other than that, replays are on the Sonoma Strong Healing Fairs YouTube, and you can, like Diana said earlier, access that through our website. So again, I just want to thank everybody for being here, and again, thank you, Michelle, and I look forward to talking with you. Have a great night.
Thanks.